This was an interesting team. Led by Derek Carr, the 2016 Raiders were an exciting bunch of young players that were looking to make some noise in the postseason. The Raiders headed home to Oakland for Week 16 against the Colts, and that's when everything went wrong.
It's rewind time.
Born just a 2-hour drive from Ohio State, Connor Cook's family had plenty of sports experience. His father had played college ball at Indiana, and his mother and older sister both played college basketball at Cincinnati and Old Dominion, respectively. Despite living close to Ohio State, Cook would commit to the rival Michigan State to go play for the Spartans. After redshirting, he would be the backup in 2012 for most of the season. Of course, this is college football, so he still saw a little bit of playing time. Michigan State was ranked as high as number 10, but they lost to all but one of the ranked teams they faced, which left them as unranked to end the year. They were still bowl eligible, though, at 7-6, and the Spartans got to head down to Sun Devil Stadium in Phoenix, Arizona for the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl against TCU. Despite backing up Andrew Maxwell for the season, Cook was thrown into action in the second quarter down 10. He led the team for 16 yards before being put back on the bench. Cook would return after the half, where he was subbed back in after the first drive. Starting on his own 10, Cook led the offense all the way down the field before connecting on a crossing route for the touchdown. And the score would remain deadlocked at 13-7 until late in the fourth when Michigan State punted it to Sky Dawson, who just does not do a very good job fielding this punt. A quick rushing touchdown from Le'Veon Bell and the extra point that follows means it's 14-13 Spartans. That score won't hold. TCU kicks a 53-yard field goal with 2 minutes and 42 seconds to go. With the ball at his own 25, Connor Cook has a chance to lead the team to victory. And he does, driving the team all the way to the TCU 30 to set up Dan Conroy for the win.
Conroy to try to give Sparty the lead back on the way, and good.
The Spartan defense held, and Connor Cook had his first bowl win. As it turns out, winning the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl isn't as prestigious as winning the Rose Bowl or whatever. So that's our new goal. Michigan State wants to win the Rose Bowl. How do you get there? Well, traditionally, it's the winner of the Pac-10/12 against the winner of the Big Ten. There are a few Texas-based exceptions, but that's almost always how it goes. Michigan State's competition is the same as always. Cross-state rival Michigan and Ohio State, with another important game against Notre Dame. Cook again started the season as the backup, but was given his first start against South Florida. After an unremarkable win, Cook passed for 4 touchdowns in the first half against FCS Northeast. It was time for the Notre Dame game. Trailing 17-13 late in the fourth, on the Spartans' final drive of the game, still with the chance to win, Connor Cook was benched for Andrew Maxwell. Final score, Notre Dame 17, Michigan State 13. So that's a tough pill to swallow. But after trailing at halftime to Iowa, the Spartans would rally for 16 unanswered points in the second half. After 2 touchdown wins against Indiana and Purdue and a blowout win against Illinois, it was time for big game number 2. This one against the Wolverines of Michigan. U of M started the season 5-0 and reached as high as number 11 in the rankings. But Michigan dropped a 4-overtime game against Penn State and fell to number 23 by the time they faced newly ranked number 24 Michigan State. Both teams had 1 loss and were atop their division, meaning the winner is likely on the fast track to the Big Ten championship. The two teams traded field goals to open the game before State appeared to take the lead on a dime from Cook, but it was punched out at the very last moment. They took the lead with a field goal on the next play. After a third down stop, the Wolverines kicked a game-tying field goal. 6-6 all. After narrowly avoiding a pick thanks to his receiver, Cook leads the team down the field and dimes up Fowler in the back corner to take the lead into the break. Coming out of the half, State kicked another field goal to make it 16-6. The Michigan State defense forced Michigan to punt on their next 4 drives. Then Connor Cook led the team on a 9-play, 56-yard drive that ended in him pushing ahead and scoring the game-clinching touchdown. And if there was any doubt, a Michigan red zone interception on the next drive set in stone the upset. With the win, Michigan State was catapulted to number 14 in the rankings. The next 3 games on the schedule were on the road against Nebraska and Northwestern, with the latter win clinching a spot in the Big Ten championship game. Then a return home against Minnesota. The number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes stand in the way of Connor Cook and a conference championship. Make no mistake, this is still a crucial game for Ohio State. As the number 2 ranked team, they need a win to stay in the BCS National Championship game. For Michigan State, the stakes are slightly less, as they're likely headed to the Rose Bowl win or lose. But a win never hurt anybody. The Spartans struck first with a field goal on the opening drive. Then after a couple of punts, the second quarter begins with a bang for Michigan State as Keith Mumphrey gets behind the defense and Cook finds him wide open for the 72-yard score. After an OSU punt, the Spartans use some play action to catch the Buckeyes off guard. It works as a perfect throw from Cook to Dontre Wilson gives the Spartans 6. Michigan State is now up 17-0 on the number 2 team in the country. That doesn't last as Ohio State puts up 10 entering the break. Braxton Miller rushed for a touchdown to open the second half and the game is tied. Midway through the third, Miller rushes for another touchdown to retake the lead. The Spartans' next drive faced a 4th and 2 from the OSU 33. In a big spot, Cook called his own number.
Here's the option. Oh, Cook keeps it and picks up a first down. How often do you see that?
A beautiful fake lateral gets Joey Bosa a bite and opens up the lane for Cook to take it himself. The drive stalls, but State kicks a field goal to make it a 4-point game. After an Ohio State punt, a huge Michigan State play was shortened by a penalty. A pass interference brings State down to the 11-yard line. After Langford nearly fumbled the possession away, Cook finds Price wide open in the end zone for the go-ahead score. After OSU punts, they get a hand on Michigan State's ensuing punt, setting themselves up at the MSU 47. But the drive doesn't get going and Ohio State is faced with 4th and 1 from the 39. Miller goes right, but Danico Allen gets off his block and wraps him up. Another Spartan touchdown clinched the game. Cook takes a knee and the Michigan State Spartans are headed to Pasadena, California to take on Stanford in the Rose Bowl. 100. The 2014 edition was the 100th Rose Bowl. In a bowl game filled with rich history, however this game goes, Connor Cook is about to leave his mark on the game forever. There was one thing you could count on Michigan State for in 2013, it was defense. The team had the 3rd best pass defense and the 2nd best rush defense in the entirety of the FBS. But Stanford has a top 25 rushing attack led by Tyler Gaffney, who cracked 1,500 yards in the Pac-12 championship. Despite that, Stanford chooses to air it out early, throwing a 43-yard pass on the second play of the game. A few plays later, Gaffney bounces off of a tackler and into the end zone for the score. On the Spartans' first drive of the game, Cook gets stuffed on an option play on 3rd and 4 and they have to punt. And then a little failed shovel pass ends drive number 2. The Spartans' defense is just unable to stop Gaffney, who goes outside for 47 yards on the first play of Stanford's next drive to set up a field goal. To start the second, Cook drives it to the Stanford goal line before Langford bounces it outside for a touchdown. There is one thing that the Spartans don't need right now, and that would be a terrible, horrible decision that everybody would instantaneously go, "Holy!" Not quite what we want to see here. Yet somehow this isn't the stupidest almost halftime Rose Bowl pick 6 that I've ever talked about. But you know what doesn't happen? Cook refuses to beat himself up about this. He collects himself and passes for every single one of Michigan State's yards on the next drive, which included the touchdown. It's now 17-14 Stanford at the break. And we're gonna skip past a pretty ugly third quarter. All you need to know is that now it's 17-all. The fourth quarter begins with a 3-play 27-yard drive that gives Michigan State the lead for the first time in this game. Stanford looks to make it 24-20 with a field goal, but the holder botches it and now he just has to throw it to somebody, anybody that can get open. Somehow he does. One problem though. There was an ineligible man downfield. Not the guy that caught it, but the 10 other people surrounding him. And so instead of a first down, the Cardinal had to settle for a field goal. Michigan State had a 3-and-out that gave Stanford one last chance to win it. 4th and short with just under 2 minutes to play. This may be familiar to some of you, but rest assured, the ending is the same.
Fullback right straight ahead, and the Spartans say didn't get it.
Cook picked a very good time to set a career high in passing yards, and one of his best performances in passer rating. Michigan State would finish as the number 3 ranked team in the country, just behind the national championship participants in Florida State and Auburn. 2014 was a new era of college football. The new playoff system would give 2 more teams a chance to make the national championship. Starting the season ranked number 8, after an easy win against FCS Southeastern Week 1, the Spartans were moved up to number 7 in the rankings. And even better, Ohio State was moved below them. But I forgot to mention something. The next game on the schedule was against Oregon, the number 3 team in the nation, Oregon. The Spartans were down early, trailing 11-0 at one point, but they clawed their way back, scoring just before halftime to make it 24-18. State kicked a field goal to open the second half. Yes, sir, everything was coming up Spartans. Until Oregon scored 4 touchdowns and allowed no further points in the second half to leave Michigan State without that signature win every national champion hopeful needs. See, this is one of those weird games that's close for like 3 quarters, but ends up finishing as a total blowout. So when you look at it on paper, it doesn't look close, and then you look at it further and you're like, wait, the Spartans were winning at one point? The Spartans would win the next 6 games, including against number 19 Nebraska, and the game against Michigan. When all the games were finished, they regained the number 7 ranking. Then came the Ohio State game. Before the 2014 season, the Big Ten realigned and renamed the divisions, with Ohio State moving over to the same division as Michigan State, meaning this is a regular conference matchup. And it was a disaster for the Spartans. Another loss to a tough opponent. Now the title hopes are over. But the bowl game is not lost. Pack your bags, boys. Michigan State is going to Dallas for the Cotton Bowl Classic against the Baylor Bears. At the half, Baylor led 24-14. Jeremy Langford punched in a 2-yard score in the third, but Baylor was up 20 by the time the quarter was over. It was looking like it was going to be the 3rd heartbreaking loss of the year for the Spartans. And it was then that Connor Cook became a Michigan State legend. Baylor had the chance to clinch the game with a 44-yard field goal, but that was not going to happen. On first down, Cook heaves one over the Baylor D and right on the money. But after 3 straight incompletions, he faces 4th and 10 from the Baylor 27. What do you think happens? After 2 more incompletion, Cook takes a 3-step drop. He goes through his progressions and finds Keith Mumphrey wide open in the end zone. Tack on the extra point and it's over. Connor Cook has done it. A 20-point 4th quarter comeback is exactly what he needs to launch his career into the NFL. But he stays in college, for better or for worse. This time the hype was real. The number 5 ranked Spartans were ready to show the world they weren't frauds by opening the 2015 season with a win against Western Michigan. Oh, you're not impressed by a win against Western Michigan? Well, here comes the other half of the home and home against Oregon. The game was close, but Michigan State came through in the end. That win would catapult the Spartans into the number 2 spot in the country behind who else but Ohio State. Despite not dropping a game, they slid back to number 7 thanks to some not quite convincing wins against Purdue and Rutgers. Then it was time for the Michigan game. Trailing 7-10 at the half, the Spartans needed something big. Something like, a fake punt from their own 31. Tyler O'Connor rolls right, but his target, Monty Medeiros, isn't as open as the play designed him to be. So O'Connor makes the split-second decision to try and run for it. He has a little bit of room, but despite his diving effort, he doesn't get the first. Michigan went right down the field and scored a touchdown. Cook found his man in the front corner of the end zone for a 30-yard score, but a pair of Michigan field goals made it 23-14. Michigan State was down by 2 scores, so they would need a big play to keep this game close. And they got one as the Wolverine D completely forgot about Trayvon Pendleton as he rumbled all the way to the end zone. Wait, no, scratch that, he just knew he was down. Okay, now it's a touchdown. But that wasn't enough. Michigan State faced 4th and 19 from the Michigan 45. The Wolverines brought pressure, Cook fired up a prayer, and it was batted down by the defense. That was it. With 1:47 left and only one timeout, Michigan State could only watch as their arch rivals burned the last moments off the clock. But Michigan could only take so much time off, leaving 10 seconds left. The Wolverines are facing 4th down, so they can't just kneel it. They choose to punt, and in complete desperation, the Spartans don't have anyone back to return, sending every single player they have to try and block the punt. The season hangs in the balance. The snap goes, the Spartans rush 10, and they watch as the snap bounces right off Blake O'Neal's hands.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Woods Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
It's impossible to imagine. Michigan had about as close to a guarantee as any possible win could be, and it just slipped away. All Blake O'Neal had to do was catch the snap and punt it away. It didn't even need to be a good punt, just making it over the defense was good enough. After he dropped it, O'Neal hurried to try and get an emergency punt off. He shouldn't have. If he had just dived on the ball, Michigan State would have gotten the ball on the 40-yard line with 8 seconds left. That's out of field goal range and deep enough that a Hail Mary is unlikely. Michigan State needed a miracle, and they got one. But miracles are a funny thing. 2 weeks later against Nebraska, Michigan State had a 5-point lead with under 30 seconds to go. Tommy Armstrong Jr. tossed one to the back of the end zone and it was snagged by Arjen Calhoun. He came down with possession until the ball squirted out from his left hand. On the very next play, Brandon Riley controversially went out of bounds and came back in for the TD. After a review, it was ruled that the defender pushed him out, and as such, the touchdown counted. Michigan State takes its first loss of the season. The following week against Maryland, Cook would suffer an arm injury. It wasn't major, it would only keep him out of the next game. The opponent? Oh, no big deal, just... With their senior QB sidelined, Michigan State has to go into the horseshoe and win against the number 2 team in the nation with a backup quarterback. Do you believe in miracles? Well, you should.
For the win.
A 23-game win streak, on the road with a backup quarterback, and on senior day. Michigan State faced the impossible and won. After another win against Penn State, it was time for the Big Ten championship game. So, here are the stakes. The number 5 Michigan State Spartans versus the number 4 Iowa Hawkeyes. The winner is conference champion and will head to the college football playoff to have a chance at the national championship. But despite the importance of this game, it was ugly. Eventually, Michigan State found themselves with 9 minutes and 27 seconds left, down 4 on their own 18. With the eyes of the whole college football world watching, Connor Cook stood tall and drove the team down the field. But facing 4th and 2 at the 5-yard line, Cook decided to take it himself. What do you think happens?
Runs the option. Keeps it. Did he get it?
The chain gang measured it, and Connor Cook did in fact get the first down. Iowa forced 3rd down, but LJ Scott would not be denied.
LJ Scott running right. No, did he get him? Or did he? Yes! Touchdown Spartans!
It was over. Connor Cook has just won his 2nd Big Ten championship, this time with even more at stake. Michigan State will play in the Cotton Bowl. If they win, then they will head to the national championship.
Recovered. The Michigan State Spartans are the Big Ten champions. Hello, college football playoff East Lansing.
Then Alabama absolutely demolished the Spartans. Michigan State was held to a season low in total offense. Connor Cook tied his career high in interceptions and posted one of the lowest passer ratings of his career. The 26th best rush defense in the NCAA gave up 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Spartans never stood a chance, and just like that, Connor Cook's college career was over. Oh, were you expecting a happy ending? That's not how college football works. Cook left Michigan State as the all-time leader in both passing yards and touchdowns. After the draft combine, he received a 6.3 grade, and that's on a 5.5 to 8 scale, okay. The 6.3 estimates that he will eventually be a plus starter, whatever that means. That made him the 4th highest ranked starter behind Jared Goff, Paxton Lynch, and Carson Wentz. Goff went number 1 overall, Wentz went 2, Lynch went 26th, and then Cook had to watch as 3 quarterbacks rated below him went ahead of him. But finally, with the second pick in the 4th round, he was headed to Oakland to be a Raider. You might have heard of the next quarterback taken. And now we circle back to the 2016 Raiders. The team almost played as the Los Angeles Raiders for 2016, and they would play the entire season under the cloud of possible relocation. Of course, we now know where that saga is headed, but it's good to remember where things stood at the time. In the meantime, this was one of the clutchest teams in NFL history. Week 1 in New Orleans, Carr leads the team on a 75-yard drive to make it a 1-point game with 47 seconds left. Not wanting overtime, Jack Del Rio chooses to go for it, and it works. Raiders win 35-34. Week 4 in Baltimore, Carr leads the Raiders 66 yards to find Crabtree in the back of the end zone. The extra point makes it 28-27, and that holds as the final score. Week 8 in Tampa, the Silver and Black go 75 yards en route to tying the game. They missed the kick at the end of regulation, but deep into overtime they go for it on 4th down, and Seth Roberts breaks 2 tacklers to win the game. Week 11 in Mexico, Jameis Olawale takes a Carr pass 75 yards for the score to tie it. Then Amari Cooper takes a Carr pass 35 yards to take the lead. 27-20 is your final. The next week against Carolina, Clive Walford makes a phenomenal catch to cap a 75-yard drive to bring it within 2. Seth Roberts catches the 2-point conversion to tie the game. Then Carr drives 82 yards to take the lead in a field goal. Final score 35-32. Sorry, Cam. Again the next week against the Bills, Oakland went 38 yards to bring the game within 1. Then 59 to take the lead. Then another touchdown just because. 38-24. Week 15 against San Diego, Oakland takes a second-half lead on a field goal. Then the Chargers take the lead on a touchdown, but miss the extra point because it's the Chargers. The Raiders kick a field goal to tie it, then a field goal to take the lead. 19-16 final, and a playoff spot clinched. The Raiders headed home to Oakland for Week 16 against the Colts. And that's when everything went wrong. With a 19-point lead in the 4th quarter, Derek Carr was sacked, and he happened to be mic'd up on the play.
What's up? It's broke. It's broke. It's broke. It's broke. It's broke. It's broke.
He was right. He broke his fibula. Carr would be out for the rest of the season, cutting short what was up to that point a borderline MVP campaign. So Matt McGloin comes in to replace him. Week 17 presented a sliver of hope. If they beat the Broncos, the Raiders would get a first-round bye. An extra week of rest and preparation would definitely help with a backup quarterback suddenly taking the wheel. The last thing they needed was losing him to injury. Well, it's 3rd and 29. Oakland throws an unproductive screen, and then the cameras catch a scarier sight. McGloin in obvious pain. It was his shoulder. Jared Crick threw him to the turf, and his game is done. That hit would, spoiler alert, end his season as well. Now down 2 quarterbacks, at this point I feel it's necessary to give you a window into the Raiders front office. There is no plan D. Connor Cook is the only quarterback left on the roster. He trots out there in Denver and completes his first pass. The receiver drops his second pass. He tosses a screen that picks up a few yards, but not enough for the first. A 3-and-out for his first drive. He was making some decent gains on his second drive, but Shane Ray punched the ball loose and Denver recovered. Another 3-and-out. Then on his 4th drive, Cook actually makes a few really good throws, including this touchdown to Amari Cooper. It fell under review and they confirmed it. Connor Cook has his first career passing touchdown. However, the 2-point conversion fell incomplete. Coming off the first score since losing Derek Carr, the Raiders again go 3-and-out after the 3rd down blitz forces a bad throw from Cook. Then a complicated trick play led to a fumble, and another 3-and-out leads to a solid drive for Cook. On 2nd and 1, he has Michael Rivera open, but with pressure right in his face, he fires it a tad bit high and right to Justin Simmons. Cook's final drive of the game was like a roller coaster. A solid completion for a first down, a near interception, another solid completion, and then a sack fumble on 4th down to end this game. I can imagine this did not inspire much hope for the Raiders. It's hard winning a playoff game as a backup quarterback. By my count, there have been 9 true backup quarterbacks to replace the starter that started in a playoff game. They have combined for a 3-9 record. Now, you're probably looking at this and wondering why I'm counting Kaepernick as a backup and not guys like Brady or Roethlisberger. And while it is true that Brady was a backup, Drew Bledsoe actually was healthy from week 10 onward. So from my point of view, that means Brady was named the starter over him. Again, it is true that Ben Roethlisberger was not the starter, but he took over in week 3 and didn't lose a game until the AFC Championship game, so hey, look who it is. Kaepernick is different. He took over in week 11 much later in the season than the other two. But if you don't include him, the record would be 1-8. Shout out to TJ Yates and that 2011 Bengals team. Interesting note, the Texans and Raiders were both using backup quarterbacks. Kind of. We already know who the Raiders are using at quarterback, but how about the Texans? Well, they're using the starter, kinda. Let me explain. So Peyton Manning was, I promise this is relevant. So Peyton Manning was not really good in his first 8 starts of the 2015 Denver Broncos season. So in the Week 10 game against the Chiefs, when he broke the all-time career passing yards record, it was kind of funny that he was benched. I'm not joking, he had a passer rating of 0 in the first 3 quarters. In stepped the backup, Brock Osweiler. Osweiler would start the remainder of the games, but he would be sidelined with injury come playoff time. He arguably did better than Manning, and when the Broncos won Super Bowl 50, his contract was up. Sorry, Cam. He was arguably the best quarterback in the free agent market, so the Texans gave him a 4-year, $72 million contract. That contract is what we in the biz call a mistake. Osweiler was not good in 2016, and then it would result in him getting benched in favor of Tom Savage, who was simultaneously both an upgrade and a downgrade. But he was placed in concussion protocol in week 17, so it's the Osweiler show. Brock Osweiler versus Connor Cook in arguably the worst quarterback matchup in NFL playoff history. Oakland won the toss and deferred. We can only hope their below-average defense can stop the Texans enough to keep it a game. The defense bends, but ultimately forces a punt. Starting at their own 7 in front of a raucous Texans crowd that yours truly was a part of, Cook has a chance to throw it after a run with an empty backfield. And immediately his first pass is deflected by Jadeveon Clowney, who's gonna be a pretty big fixture in this game. His second pass goes for a yard. Did you know the 2016 Texans scored the fewest touchdowns of any playoff team in the 16-game era? That TD-averse offense, well, didn't score a TD. After a pair of runs leaves the Raiders with 3rd and 12, Coach Jack Del Rio calls a running back screen. Now, it's worth noting that Pro Bowl left tackle Donald Penn was out with injury, so keep that in mind as you watch Jadeveon Clowney go completely unblocked. And watch as Connor Cook's pass flies a bit too close to the sun.
Roll out to the right, he threw it up for grabs, and it's fielded by Clowney, who's ankle tackled by Latavius Murray.
Cook just never saw him, and the Texans score on the next play. It's rough. Even though the Texans were missing their best defensive player in J.J. Watt for most of the season, they allowed the league's fewest yards and the second fewest passing yards. The Raiders' first down is converted, but even then it's a missed opportunity. Look at all this green grass ahead of Crabtree. If he didn't slip, he could have easily ripped off a huge gain. Cook takes a sack and slams his face right into his offensive lineman's, posterior. Cook throws wide and it's incomplete. Then he throws the pass, which after review was also incomplete. And after not 1, not 2, but 3 attempts at downing the punt, the ball just rolls into the end zone. Jalen Richard finally gets the Raiders into Texans territory for a prime scoring opportunity. Latavius Murray does the heavy lifting on this drive, but Cook sneaks one 7-yard completion in before Murray punches it in himself. Cook makes a nice throw for a first down. He made another good throw, but the receiver dropped it. Cook overthrows his next pass, but it turns out to be a blessing in disguise as Jonathan Joseph just gets his hands on it to tip it away. After a Houston field goal, Cook does another one of those was it intended for the defender or the receiver throws. On 3rd down, it's Joseph again for the easy stop. On another 3rd down, Cook fails to see Andre Hall, who drops an easy pick. The Raiders again try a screen, but it's covered. Cook recognizes this and doesn't throw it. But sensing Clowney, he throws it directly into the ground. Is that not intentional grounding? Let's just give it to him. He needs this. In a move that says, "Dear football gods, what did we do wrong?" the Raiders run a draw play on 3rd and 19. Entering the half, things are about how you would expect them to be. 4 for 14 with 41 yards and a pick is... To start the second half, Cook gets pressured by who else but Clowney. His pass is on target, but it bounces off the hands of Seth Roberts. However, a flag was thrown. 5 yards on the defense. Cook throws it for Seth Roberts, but a timing route is hard to pull off when you haven't practiced as the starter all season. Cook tries to avoid the pressure, but the Texans' pass rush is merciless. Literally, as Whitney Merciless gets the sack. 3rd and 21. Cook, just pick up some yards to make your stats look better. Tyler Irvin almost gives the Raiders an extra chance with a muff, but he recovers it. In between drives, McGloin tries his hardest to instill some wisdom. And once again, it's Jalen Richard getting the ball into enemy territory. And then he catches a low throw. Cook's offensive line is just that. Offensive. Cook misses everybody on this throw, but then he dimes up Amari Cooper, but he drops it. The Raiders try some trickeration, and it gets them nothing. At this point, the drops are no longer funny, they just hurt. Crabtree makes a nice catch, but he gets flagged for pass interference. After a false start, the drops have reached depressing status. Osweiler channels his inner VY and runs for a touchdown. Another deflection, a one-on-one ball is deflected, then the Raiders just barely pick up a first down. On the run, deflection, short completion, Andre Holmes somehow hangs on to this, play fake completion, long completion is negated by offensive PI, I don't know how this was deflected, and then a very timely defensive pass interference sets up 1st and goal. Cook makes a good throw and it's a touchdown! An actual real-life touchdown! The comeback starts now, boys, let's go! Let's keep that momentum going. 9-yard completion. Another 9-yard completion. 13-yard completion. Oh yeah, baby, it's happening. Cook is about to pull out some magic.
High throw and it's intercepted.
That was it. No, really. No comeback on this one. No last-second miracle. Connor Cook's final NFL pass is an interception to A.J. Boye. J.J. Watt was injured the entire game, and he summarized the game best.
Backup left tackle, 3rd string quarterback. Oh, time to eat. Sounds like eating season, yeah? Hell yeah. It's like a buffet, right?
There's no sugarcoating this one, folks. When throwing at least 45 passes, some very bad performances come up when you sort by worst passer rating. But Connor Cook is the very worst performance of them all. His only neighbors are some performances from the 1960s. If we get rid of all the pre-2000 performances, he has Peyton Manning to keep him company. But in the pass-happy 2010s, he's all alone. A full 22.3 point gap between him and Patrick Mahomes' second Super Bowl attempt. And that was it. Cook never played in an NFL game ever again. To date, he is, and will probably forever remain, the only quarterback in NFL history to make his one and only career start in a playoff game. In the seasons following his NFL experience, Cook bounced around to a few teams. He was activated for one game in 2017 with the Raiders and then never again. When Oakland traded for A.J. McCarron, they had no more use for Cook and released him. The Panthers signed him to their practice squad, but they cut him a month later. The Bengals signed him to another practice squad deal, but the Lions picked him up for the offseason on a futures contract, which is just a practice squad deal with extra steps. But suddenly, a twist. You remember the AAF? Remember how Garrett Gilbert was like the GOAT of the upstart spring league? You remember how he didn't participate in the XFL? Well, guess who got drafted?
Houston Roughnecks will select Connor Cook, quarterback, Michigan State.
Now here's the interesting thing. The XFL, like the AAF, had a quarterback draft before the draft. Naturally, the Houston Roughnecks took a quarterback with that pick, Temple's P.J. Walker. So they took a quarterback. They had a quarterback, and yet they spent their number 2 overall pick on a quarterback. Would you believe it if I told you that Connor Cook led the Houston Roughnecks to the best record in the XFL? Well, you shouldn't, because he didn't. P.J. Walker did. In fact, Cook never got a chance to play. When the league shut down operations due to the pandemic, his contract was terminated. He could still theoretically make an NFL roster. I mean, it's not illegal. I mean, shoot, Garrett Gilbert made a comeback on my birthday, too. Cook now works in real estate based out of Cleveland. He participated in the Meadows Turkey Bowl, which is a charity football game held every year to raise money to fight cancer. And that's where this story ends. On a positive note, a little bit of Mark Kiger and a little bit of Garrett Gilbert. That's Connor Cook for you.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really understand, but I found out this